Fair use. Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 USC 107. This is for entertainment purposes only.
O Yahweh, Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputsu O Yezreasa, Wayanusa Misanecha Mituniasa. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.
Family, and welcome to Into All Truth. May the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come, and the seed of the word be planted in your heart in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Shalom, family. So we just had trumpets this weekend, and apparently we were nearly unalived because Putin directly threatened America, saying if they were using long-range missiles out of Ukraine, it would be clear evidence that they were guided by the technology that the United States of America uses. And so it would be a declaration of war. And basically Putin said, we are, everyone's like, don't come for me, don't come for me. He said, we're going to come for you. He said, we're going to come for you. We're coming for you. But this just confirms again, Feast of Trumpets was right on time. It was time to gather and gather for war. So he's now said it. So we're now there. It said a rumor would come in 1 year, and in another year, that would be it. So we're here. We're standing on the precipice, family. So praise Yah for revelation through the festivals and feasts, despite their timing. It's time for Yasharel to gather and to forgive. And I'm going to just do this teaching. I'm going to review a lot of stuff that people have heard before on my channel about who the four carpenters are, but I'm going to show you some great footage from, where InfoWars is admitting who true Israel is, like openly and blatantly. And we're going to talk about, Stu Peters and his view on the Jewish people. And again, the Hegelian dialectic. And we're going to get into these four carpenters, but ultimately what we're proving is, yes, that Netanyahu is the king of the West and just ruling there between the seas. So we're going to go into all the proofs. And, I really want to make the China connection because a lot of people don't really get it. And I do talk about it in a lot of my videos. It is the Mongolians. It is the Horde, the Golden Horde. It is the Canaanites. And so I'm going to touch on that again and then just do our, review our final prophecy scripture from Daniel on who the king of the West is and where he is and everything at this very end time that we are actually in right now. And so I want to say thanks to all the male and female teachers out there that I listen to, Truth Unedited, Benaiah Israel, Hebrew Nation Building, Dwayne, the Ark, Teo, so many people who have really fed my teaching, so many of the men, even Ronald Dalton, and just so many teachers. I'm sure I'm missing some. I hope I said Truth Unedited. I Woke Now, Mother Waiters, so many people I have listened to. I don't like to be in an echo chamber. I disagree with people, but I learn a lot from everybody. And so I just want to say blessings to you all, even UIC and GOCC. I learn a lot from those teachers. You know, I don't agree with everything, and I don't know that everyone's Israel. I still don't know. Take Fortison. But I just say thanks to all the teachers, because now is a time for more unity. But let's get into this study. We have some shocking commentary for you, and I hope it blesses you. And I'm going to cover some of the material from my book. So, who is the king of the West? Well, we're going to get into it in a second, and I'm going to just show you some really revelatory things the Gentiles are saying about this. We obviously, as Israel, we already know this stuff, but it's very clear now that the ruler of the West is Israel, and so its leader, Netanyahu. And so we're going to look once again at the four carpenters and the prophecy of Daniel, but we're going to also look at current affairs and new things that I'm sharing from the book that I've been writing since early in the year on the geography of the lands. Each man returned to his own land. Awake, O sleeper. So come out of Babylon. And so I go into all who the nations are, what the geography of the lands are. And so I've learned a lot. So I'm going to share some of that with you to give some clarification. But let's just do a quick foray into what this video is about, the four carpenters, why Netanyahu is the king of the West. And then we'll go into those four carpenters, and and of course we will add to that the prophecy of Daniel that defines the king of the West and his end times. So let's get into it. In the book of Zechariah, Yahuwah is sore displeased because the nations are at rest and his children are captive. And so we begin the story of the four carpenters. According to Zechariah, he says, "Then I lifted up mine eyes, and behold, four horns. And I said unto the angel that talked to me, What be these? And he answered me, These are the horns which have scattered Judah and Israel and Jerusalem. And Yahuwah showed me four carpenters. And then said I, What come these to do? And he spake, saying, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it." So the four carpenters, I've done so many videos on this, are basically China, India, Russia, and the Black Edomite African nations. And so right now, Africa is, in order for Judah to be regathered, Israel to be regathered from the four corners of the earth, these four carpenters have to start the winds, the four winds of heaven stirring and war. And just as Israel was scattered, they will be regathered to the land. The Europeans were the ones who scattered Israel, and that's all of Western Europe. So did the Medo-Persians, which is Iran, including the Turks and so on. And as well, so did the Assyrians, which are those in India as well as here in America. So did Arabs, all right, who were participatory in the Arab slave trade. And of course, Russia was part of the European, through Charlemagne, the European pattern of taking captive the world. And so these are the ones who scattered Israel, and they're going to regather Israel as well. They're also the four beasts that scattered Israel. And of course, the prophecy in scripture is that Japheth will dwell in the tents of Shem. Japheth will dwell in the tents of Shem. And so that is the prophecy of the blessing of Japheth in Genesis 9:27. And so Japheth is in the key position of rulership right now because of that and the ending of the times of the Gentiles. And so this is why we can clearly designate that Netanyahu, being a descendant of Ashkenaz, who is his firstborn son of Gomer, is in fact the king of the West, dwelling in the tents of Shem, ruling the earth.
Why shouldn't we engage with Israel and try to fix this?
I think we should. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is the de facto president of the United States, if you want to just keep it real. He's calling the shots. And as a matter of fact, there's videos of him saying, it doesn't matter what the American people feel about Israel. It doesn't matter what the American government feels about Israel, because we have them so programmed that they will do anything for Israel. We can do whatever we want and get away with it. He has said that himself on tape. If we have that kind of control structure and power over our entire operating system of our...
So if you had a magic wand, get rid of the top of the Jews or just get rid of all of them? Or like, you had a magic wand?
The satanic, non-practicing fake Jews, the Khazars, the people who, the Zionists, who are infiltrating free governments across the face of the planet. Ours being...
Well, let me ask you...
If you say to the average person, they don't know that our Congress members, our representatives at the federal level have to actually swear an allegiance to this foreign state before they can take the oath of our own Constitution to do the bidding of our people. That should concern everybody.
No, I agree. We should not have dual loyalties.
Or dual citizenship. These people control our military...
Israel's not the only place with dual citizenship.
But listen, these people control our military-industrial complex. These people fund Lockheed Martin and Raytheon so that we can go and make missile testing sites in Ukraine. Why are we fighting a war in Ukraine? Has Congress declared a war? No.
So that's Jews too.
So if Congress hasn't declared a war,
so the Ukraine thing's Jews too.
It all points back to Israel because
explain to me, because I thought it was a NATO battle with Russia. They've been using that for a proxy war. I know Zelensky's Jewish, but what
who controls NATO? Who funds NATO? 75% the United States of America. Where does that funding come from? Every single military intervention that we have ever been involved with is funded by the same group of people and enriches these NGOs and enriches the fat cats like Lindsey Graham and, the Turtle Lord Mitch McConnell in the DC Beltway. These people are killing millions of innocent people. We talked last time, I don't know if it was on my show or yours, we talked about what's happening in Gaza, one of the most densely populated areas where 50% of the population is under the age of 15, 75% is under the age of 25, and you have members of Congress demanding that we go blow up apartment buildings and nuke these people off the face of the planet. What is the benchmark for success in Gaza?
But who is true Israel? Well, let's listen to what the other Gentile nations are saying about the so-called Jews and who true Israel is.
And when he said black women have this gift, it's true that black people in the genetic testing are like the original. And how does the ADL say it's anti-Semitic for black people who are related directly to King Solomon and King David, the line of Judah, to act like they don't know this? I'm not blaming Jews for this. I'm blaming the leftist ADL. To deny black Jews their heritage is a historic fraud. It's a damn historic fact. It's on Wikipedia. It's not even debated. Black people in the genetic testing are like the original. And how does the ADL say it's anti-Semitic for black people who are related directly to King Solomon and King David, the line of Judah, to act like they don't know this? I'm not blaming Jews for this. I'm blaming the leftist ADL. To deny black Jews their heritage is a historic fraud. It's a damn historic fact. It's on Wikipedia. It's not even debated.
Daniel and the prophecy of the demise of the king of the west. So we've talked about who the king of the west is, and here is my scripture for him, Daniel 11:14. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fail. Now I want you to understand that Esau Edom exalted himself to fulfill that vision through Prester John at that time, but it is also a double prophecy. Why? Because in around 1949, another particular set of people exalted themselves to try to fulfill the vision of being the people of Israel. And they are currently in the beautiful land, in the land of Israel today. Now, the land of Israel, as I teach, is much larger than what is taught by the Gentiles because, of course, they teach lies and error. But what is going to happen again for a third time is that they will try to exalt themselves to fulfill this vision at this time again of being the true people of the seed and this is how the Antichrist will attempt to set up his kingdom. And that will be through the Ish people, but really ultimately through a Nimrod type, who is again the fourth man, who is a mixture of all people, but he truly will be looking like the original Nimrod, the original Esau's Christ. And of course, we all know very well now that the Jewish people did fund and finance the transatlantic slave trade. So these are the robbers of our people who will exalt themselves to establish the vision, but will fail. So what does it say about Tyre? These are the Tyrians, and I'm going to show that to you. These are the Turkish, are the Tyrians, and they are the Tartarians, and these are the Ashkenazi. And so what it says about the king of Babylon, and we know Hasatan is the spiritual king of Babylon, and so here is a picture of Kazakhstan, which is the true Turkey, which is what I'm going to show you guys. This is the true Tyre. This is the true Turkey of the land of Japheth. Zechariah 9:3 says, Tyre has built herself a stronghold. She has heaped up silver like dust and gold like the dirt of the streets. But Yahuwah will take away her possessions and destroy her power on the sea, and she will be consumed by fire. Okay, so this is what I believe to be the true Tyre. But of course, it's moved its boundaries, as we know very well. And of course, the rulership has moved. Tyre and the children of Tyre, the Khazars, the Kazakhstanis, right, are ruling the world through Japheth and the other three sons they represent. Here we can get a geographical concept of where this seat is, this seat of power, so we can get an idea of what's happening right now and what's going to happen. So this is, remember, there's three people who make up really Ashkenaz, and that's Canaan, Esau, and Japheth. So Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All right. And currently, Ashkenaz is sitting in the land of Shem, right? Because Japheth will dwell in the tents of Shem, per Genesis. But this man is sitting in the midst of the seas, in the midst of the seas. He's always talking about how he's on the seas, because remember, Satan rules the marine kingdom, right? So he rules the ocean, admiralty, law, all of that is coming from him. So here's three witnesses to where he is located. Ezekiel 28:2, and we'll do Daniel 11:45, just so we can get an idea of where he is and what his comeuppance will be, what will happen to him. Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a God, and I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas, yet thou art a man and not God, though thou set thine heart as the heart of God. So this is the warning against Tyre. And this is the prince of Tyre, where Yahuwah says, take up a lamentation for the prince of Tyre in another scripture. So this is Satan, and this is whoever is serving Satan. So are thou wiser than Daniel? That's not the right quote. It should be, or do you think you're wiser than Daniel? It's actually, are thou wiser than Daniel in the Septuagint. It says, by thy great wisdom and by thy traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. So this is Babylon and the king of Babylon, king over America. All right, so here's the first witness. And then Ezekiel 28:8, and they shall bring thee down to the pit, and thou shalt die the deaths of them that are slain in the midst of the seas. And then the final witness, so that's Daniel 11:45, which we're going to read through. And this is when he finally goes to war, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So the common scripture is, because Satan rules the marine kingdom, and so do his agents and his kings and his antichrists, he rules in the midst of the sea right now. He rules in the midst of the nations, when we look at it quite literally. Now, family, we already reviewed the second Esdras Eagle Vision. Go back to my last Candace video on the Hegelian dialectic, and we go over the Eagle Vision there. But at the end of it, Yahushua, the lion, comes and rebukes the evil bird, the two-headed bird, the right-hand, left-hand bird. So now we're going to go into the prophecy of Daniel. Why? Because it covers the transfers of power from one empire to the other after the fall of Yasharel. Family, we are going to look at the prophecy of Daniel, where the kingdoms are actually transferred, and we're going to actually see Prester John, and we're going to see the Golden Horde, and what is recited as the takeover of the Ethiopian kingdom by the Golden Horde, all the way to the prophecy of now, the final king in Daniel 11, the king who plants himself between the seas and nobody helps him. It's final king of the West. And so this is how we know, although we've had Netanyahu ruling, the art of war was written by the Chinese, the Mongols, the Golden Horde, the Canaanites, who became the rulers in Britain, who are the fourth man. What is the fourth man? I've shown you in my other videos many times. There are three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The fourth man is the Nephilim, or Hasatan. And in every single Babylonian kingdom, including America, you have a mixture. In every empire, even in Israel, you had a mixture. That's why they had laws for the strangers, because whatever kingdom is ruling, every nation will flow to, because that's the ruling nation, and all of their kings will come to represent their nations, to be ruled and to share wealth. That's how kingdoms work. However, in Babylon, it is confusion by mixing, whereas in Israel, it was all under Yah, and it was one law for Israel and the stranger. But you're going to have everybody there. And so this is why you have this, in Babylon, you have this four-faced man, this three-faced man, Janus, Janissary, because it is a union of Shem, Ham, and Japheth into this mixed multitude, or this fourth man. And then the Nephilim and Satan can hide in that identity, okay? And that's what the Golden Horde became. They became powerful through their cabal, through their, what do you want to call it, conspiracy against Israel. And the blessing of Esau, the blessing that was on Esau to rule the world by the sword, and the blessing that was on Japheth to dwell in the tents of Shem. They had to combine all of their forces and blessings to overtake Israel and to take the land. And through that, you become Babylonian, you become the fourth man, the Golden Horde, the Mongol, which so many of us are mixed now because of Babylon. But Satan meant it for evil, and Yah meant it for good. Right, so we're going to read through Daniel 11. So here is Daniel 11, and we have this whole prophecy from the time of Darius the Mede. And it goes through all these Gentile nations until the end, okay? And it talks about Alexander the Great coming, and then his kingdom being split into four, shall be divided towards the four winds of heaven, not to his posterity, right? And then it talks about this king of the south rising up. And it talks about the king's daughter coming to make an agreement, but she will not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand his arm, but she shall be given up. Cleopatra, if you're talking about the queen of the south, because then that can be either the Shemites, or sometimes it's Ham. You're talking about the queen of the south. It can be the Cushites, or it can be the Shemitic Ethiopians, or the Cushitic Ethiopians, okay? And so the captives, Israel goes captive to Egypt. So this is principally highlighting the rulership of the kings of the north. So these are the Japhetic kings coming in, because they have the Genesis prophecy that Japheth will dwell in the tents of Shem, and also obviously the prophecy and promise of Esau ruling by the sword, via the fourth man, via this confederacy. And we get into this prophecy where I believe we're talking about Edom at the time that he is ruling. He has taken over the rulership of Africa. Start at verse 14, Daniel 11 and 14. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fail. I believe that this is the time when Prester John comes along. And remember, I talk about how the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser is actually Esau, Edom. All right, and so we had the Holy Roman Empire, we had Mansa Musa ruling throughout the whole earth and calling himself David and Solomon as Prester John. So exalting himself to fulfill the vision of being the Messiah. And you can imagine, once he got the advantage, he and his people probably believed that the promise of having the ruling kingdom like Israel had it would be theirs now. You could totally see that happening. That's why they had their pressers, their Holy Roman Empire. That's why they had called him Solomon, and called their kings Davids and Solomons. Okay? This is what you read about in Prester John. But this is a double prophecy. So let's read it through again from the beginning. Daniel 11 and 14. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fail. So then the king of the north shall come and cast upon a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land by which his hand shall be consumed. So this is the king of the north. So this is when Japheth comes into the land of Shem to rule it. Okay? This is beyond Darius, though. Okay? This is after the Medo-Persian Empire. And he shall set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither before him. So I believe this is a prophecy of when the Mongol horde, the kings of the north, which we're going to see became the Mongols, became the Canaanite Japheth Mongol horde. And this is when they took the kingdoms of the south away from the Shemites. All right? And there's a point in that story where these Mongol kings they actually ask for the Ethiopian daughter of the king of Ethiopia, and he refuses them. I've read that before in my Prester John videos. And so I think that's what this is about, is that he does get the daughter of women. It says the daughter of women because the women in Africa The descendants of Shem are the Adamic women. They are the Eve women. They are the first, the original woman. So that's why it says the daughter of women. Okay? And so here's the Esau tribe. Okay, today, the Presters, and they love this orange because of the red of Esau. And here's another iteration of them. You see the Israelites here on the ground and them as Arabs because they conducted the Arab slave trade. So that's the king of the south for Africa. All right, and so we're going to continue. We're going to go all the way to verse 38 in Daniel. And this is the king of the north who has now become the Mongol horde. And it says of his estate, but in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. Now, what is Darth Vader? The force be with you, right? The God of forces is also the God of war. Okay? That's not Yahuwah Sabaoth, because as it was prophesied for Edom to rule by the sword, that was a blessing that Isaac gave him, that he would live by the sword. That is the God of war and forces. Okay? Thus shall he do in most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge, and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. So the Mongolian horde and Esau Edom and Japheth, they all divide up the land. That is what the Europeans eventually did, right? The scramble for Africa. And notice it says here, Rome was picked apart and divided by 10 barbarian tribes, which became 10 countries in Europe. Okay? But anyway, so this is the Mongolian horde ruling. So here is the prophecy of the very end of time from the same chapter, Daniel 11. We're already at verse 48, way down near the end. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. So it's referring to somebody, and it's a little puzzle that we have to kind of figure out. Because we're like, well, who is him? But we don't know yet. We have to deduce it. And the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries, and they shall overflow and pass over. And he shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. So for everybody who is running around saying that Esau is the white man is completely proven wrong here. Because the glorious land is the land of Israel. And that is a black country. And it's not just Israel, it's the whole land. Because Edom's land is not just that patch of land. He has taken a lot more land. And he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. So what we see here in this prophecy in Daniel 11 is what's happening right now. The Libyans and the Ethiopians and the Egyptians are on the side of the West, although the Egyptians are not happy. Okay? And it says, but tidings out of the east and out of the north, so from China and Russia, shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain.
yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So we know that Israel today is between the seas. Is it not in the midst of the seas? It's in the midst of the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Pacific Sea. And of course, they'll say the Red Sea is there too. So he's definitely in the midst of the seas. All right? But, you know, I believe that the Holy Land is in the Congo, Uganda, Kenya area. And the door to that area is...
We also see that Djibouti, right down there by Yemen and Ethiopia, is also in the midst of the seas, in the midst of the seas. All right? And just so you know, Lake Victoria is also considered a sea, so keep that in mind.
That this is the land of Shem and the land of Israel. This is according to the book of Jubilees. And the land of Israel, where the temple is, Jerusalem is in the Congo area near Uganda, the mouth of the Nile. It's Eden, basically. There is a Horn of Africa. I believe Ethiopia is part of it, but I believe it's deeper in the Congo. Netanyahu is in the midst of the seas. And what will have to happen is that they will have to invade into Africa. And they've already talked about it. They've talked about sending the Palestinians to the Congo and Rwanda, and they've talked about sending Russian refugees who are trying to get into Germany, and Ukrainian refugees who don't want to be Russia side. They're saying, oh, we'll send you to Rwanda to be processed. That's like the latest thing in the news on the BBC. German officials suggest Rwanda scheme using UK facilities. So they were going to process immigrants into Rwanda, which was just crazy. Like all the African immigrants, they were going to say, you guys, instead of coming into the UK, go to Rwanda. Of course, Rwanda is spearheading all the Congo wars. So basically, they're the enemies of the Bantus. And then they're saying, oh yeah, if you want to get into the UK, go to the Rwandese. So then they scrapped that. And now you have German officials suggesting a Rwanda scheme where they use those same facilities that the British built in Rwanda to process immigrants from Russia. Like how many, they're talking about, they're conflating their immigrant issue, their Black and Arab immigrant issue. They're conflating that with Western loyalist Russians and Ukrainians being immigrants. And they're saying that they should be going to Rwanda to get processed. And then in this article, they go, no, we're not saying that we would deport them there. We're saying we would just do their paperwork processing. Make that make sense. Just your paperwork is being done in Rwanda? Like that doesn't make any sense. So something's up with that. They keep coming up with these excuses. Like I said in my other Netanyahu video, they were saying that they wanted to have the Palestinian refugees go to the Congo. Make that make sense. You know, it's like, how can we get white people into Africa? Like, it's crazy. They just want so badly to be there, which everybody does, but you have to do it in righteousness, in Yahusha. Not in, you can't go over the fence and sneak in. But nonetheless, the true door to Africa is here at the Nuba Mountains near Darfur. That's why they call it Darfur. It's Dar means door. And this is the prophecy of the open door, okay? Of a door opening because of the whirlwind of these four nations regathering Israel, which would, include, obviously, the Ashkenazis, because they were the ones who were on the record for enslaving Israel, right? And so they're going to regather Israel. And they're going to try to exalt themselves to fulfill the vision, just like they did in 1949, the vision of the coming Messiah. Even though they are over here in Israel right now, nonetheless, they're going to have to enter into the continent. And that's why I'm bringing up these crazy schemes they're coming up with about how they're going to get Ukrainians and expat Russians, basically more Khazars into Africa.
Stu, I'm not condescending to you. I think you're a smart guy, okay? But I'm trying to really get you to think about something here. Harvard, Yale, Princeton all basically say from the mountains to the sea, get rid of Israel. So to me, it's not black and white. You're either for Israel or for Hamas, vice versa. Why is all the academia and the leftists that are funded by BlackRock literally teaching that Jews are inherently evil, and they're attacking them all over the place, and at the university saying they're inherently bad, and the Islam is allied with the left? And then I agree, you can't swing a stick in the dark and not hit a leftist Jew in charge of it. There's some other people that aren't Jewish, but it's probably half Jewish people literally running the Islamic groups that hate the West and hate Israel. So I'm looking at this, and you've got Israel over here, and then a bunch of leftist academics like Noam Chomsky saying the Muslims are little sweetie cakes, which they're not. They want to take over on average. And I'm asking you then, if the Jews run everything, which I don't think they do, why is academia, that is the heart of the globalist, literally promoting the destruction of Israel?
We have been gaslit and programmed about Israel for decades. And there are independent people at every level that are going to say things to get the normal person to think in a certain way. And there's a cognitive disconnect.
So we have gone over the Hegelian dialectic, the controlled opposition. And I suggest you search, family, as well for videos on the art of war hosted by Walter Vaith, because he talks about in detail about how this is done. And this is what ties into the Golden Horde. This is what ties into the Chinese, because the Chinese are the ones who have the Art of War book. Okay. And so who's been driving this? Well, we know the CIA has been driving this. I'm putting up Tucker Carlson. I actually put this video up last week, these images from him. He literally met with Putin, and Putin was very clear to explain that he recognized that he was visiting him and he was CIA. And so it's the CIA, it's the FBI that is the black hand that does all of these things, the hidden hand that operates behind the scenes. And so that's why I have him as a puppet master. You can pause to read and his father's extensive history as a journalist, but a key CIA operative working with the Jewish people, and Tucker himself. But I want you to remember, family, when we're talking about this Hegelian dialectic and controlled opposition and all the rest of it, you have to remember that, somebody was speaking to me and said, well, what's in it for the Jews if they go along with this? Like, what if, somebody like Ben Shapiro knew the role that he and Candace were going to play? What's in it for them as a Jew? I said, you've got to understand, our people are so naive, and I'm equally as naive. I want to believe it all too. But our people are just so naive. It's like these people are serving Satan. That's their God. Just like how when we serve Yah, even when we served him before we knew we were Israel, we place our entire identity and faith in him. Their identity doesn't matter in the game of controlled opposition, because their identity is completely in Satan. And so they're going to do what he wants. It doesn't matter that they're a Jew or you're black or you're Chinese, whatever you are. You are an agent of Satan, and he is your God, and they actually believe that he is God. And so there's nothing, they don't care about I'm an American. They don't care about I'm a Jew. They don't care about I'm black. It's like I said in the last Candace video, you guys have to grow up quick now. You gotta, sharpen up real quick. I mean, we all have our weaknesses. I totally have mine, but sharpen up quick on this because we have to understand these people serve Satan. Their identity doesn't matter outside of him in the same way that our identity doesn't matter outside of Yahuwah. Okay? I hope that makes it clear.
So once again, Zechariah 1 says, "And I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, 4 horns. And I said to the angel that spoke with me, What are these, my Lord? And he said to me, These are the horns that have scattered Judah and Israel and Jerusalem. And Yahuwah showed me 4 artificers. And I said, What are these coming to do? And he said, These are the horns that scattered Judah, and they broke Israel in pieces, and none of them lifted up his head. These are come forth to sharpen them for their hands, even the 4 horns, the nations that lifted up the horn against the land of Yahuwah to scatter it. And I lifted up my eyes, and I looked, and behold, a man, and in his hand a measuring line. And I said to him, Whither goest thou? And he said to me, To measure Jerusalem, to see what is the breadth of it, and what is the length of it. And behold, the angel that spoke with me stood by, and another angel went forth to meet him and spoke to him, saying, Run and speak to that young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be fully inhabited by reason of the abundance of men and cattle in the midst of her. And I will be to her, saith Yahuwah, a wall of fire round about, and I will be a glory in the midst of her. So this is the promise, that this is the time for the regathering, or some say the second exodus of true Israel back to the land, where Israel, we will intercede for the nations who remain in Babylon, in America, in their own lands, and go through the judgment, the tribulation and the great tribulation. And so when we look at Zacharias, and it says, these are come to sharpen them for their hands. Okay? And they're referring to an artificer. Remember, I told you already about the hidden hand. So they're trying to create a narrative that will work for their devices. Okay, so what does artificer mean? A skilled worker, a craftsperson, one that contrives, devises, or constructs something, a deceptive or devious person. So the scripture talks about who will dwell outside of the kingdom of heaven, all of those who loveth and maketh a lie, who read lyings. Okay? And then said I, What come these to do? These are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head, but these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their hand over the land of Judah to scatter it. So this is a deceptive, or the artificer is a deceptive or devious person. Let's read more. Because when you look into the master builders of the Masons, okay, so the Jesuits are run by the Masons, okay, and they do construction, so they do architectural construction, all right? That's what they are. Here's the pineal gland, the tree of life, and the Masonic master builders are, this is a Masonic temple, architects, artificers, and carpenters. And most creative guilds have artists, artificers, people who create false fronts, architects, engineers, construction people. They're constructing a falsehood. And so land, another term for land is eretz, but it can also refer specifically to the west. It also has something to do with the prophecy of going to a strange land, Israel going into a strange land. 2 Esdras 13 and 40 says, the 10 tribes were carried away prisoners out of their own land at the time of Hosea, the king, whom Salmanasar, king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the water, so they came to another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country. Sorry, guys, I switched around. I didn't have the scripture right. But they went forth to another country where never mankind dwelt, that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow places of the river, for the Most High show signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And the same region, a world or country, is called Azareth. So Eretz Azareth, here it is, Eretz Azareth. Columbus referenced that very scripture when he went to go and discover America, Eretz Azareth. And so when we look at Eretz Azareth, Haaretz, last end posterity, hindermost reward, Olam, the place where you will be springboarded into eternity, the place of death, the new world. So it means world or country. And so we see, here it is, Terra Azareth. Let's look at another picture of it. The Canadian map shows it, Terra Azareth. Hintermost reward. The name Artes or Aretz, Aritzia, okay? This clothing store, Aritzia, right? Aretz or Artes. They're all connected, okay, etymologically. So these are the artificers of the West. And so I have a film strip where you can think of that as a TV screen or a computer screen or a phone, right? And we have the images of the false gods, and we have the monuments and the temple monuments that they created. So they create false gods, they cast idols and images. Okay? That's why they're called guilds. So they have screenwriters guilds, they have actors guilds, they have craftsperson guilds in the film industry. They have authors who write. So the name Artes has a rich and fascinating history that spans across different languages and cultures and continents. Furthermore, the connection between the name Artes and the Greek word artos goes beyond its literal meaning. In ancient Greek culture, bread held a sacred place, often associated with religious rituals and offerings. So the land has something to do with the Greeks. So Eretz or Artes has something to do with the Greeks. This land relates to the Romans also. Why? In Latin, the word arte translates to art in English. And of course, we're talking about the four artificers. And when we begin to touch on Ham and we relate this term to the Arabs, who are a mixture of Egyptians and Shemites, Hagar was the mother of Ishmael and Abraham, his father. Another cultural influence to the name Artes can be found in the rich tapestry of Arabic language. This name is believed to be derived from the word aratz, meaning the secret, the hidden. You know, they're always talking about secret here, right? Always putting the hand up to the lips to go shh. In other words, hide the secret, right? This connection adds an air of mystery and intrigue to the name. This ties it to Mystery Babylon. This is a place where there are idols, artificers, monuments, okay? This is a hidden world. We know absolutely that the old world or true Egypt and Babylon have all been hidden, as we discussed, and rebranded as the new name. And this is the mystery of iniquity tied to Mystery Babylon. This is all about a place where the truth and scripture is twisted. So iniquity is to twist the meaning of scripture. So the false Christ took over from the true Christ, and that's what Yahusha warned. He said, indeed, you will accept another Christ. And we have this you'll accept another Mashiach. Instead of Yahusha, you would accept Esau's Christ, Jesus Christ, right? The 666. Chai Zi Us, right? Jesus. So the mystery of iniquity is tied to mystery Babylon, and this is all about a place where the truth in Scripture is twisted, and the truth about the final empire hidden as mystery Babylon. So Satan could deceive the whole world. Also, the Arabic connection to the name extends to the concept of Raz, which represents esoteric knowledge and spiritual wisdom sought by mystics and scholars. So our Raz, this is the West, the true West. And of course, Yahweh speaks of the Ashtaroth poles, the Ashtaroth poles. Those are the totem poles that the pagans have, right? And they have them here in Canada. So it's a place where idols are worshipped. And the Strong Concordance says it's a time out of place, out of mind, and your final resting place. So a place where you will die. So what is a final resting place? It's a tomb, place of the grave, the death of Israel, last end, posterity, hintermost place. All right? Hindu place, hintermost place from afar, a faraway place, a pharaoh place, a pharaoh place. All right? But it is, in the positive sense, the gateway to eternity, because it is a place of death and then resurrection from the dead. It is where the sign of the Son of Man will happen and the light will shine on Israel. And we're heading to that time when Israel will rise up. And in the Tanakh, the term Amharetz means a tribal council. When Abraham wanted to purchase the cave of Machpelah, the cave of treasures, the mouth of the Garden of Eden, from the Amorites, he had to go to their Amharites, and purchase the cave from the Amharites. And today, the Jewish people call themselves Haaretz. You see the connections? Haaretz, Horites, Amharites, Horites, Amorites. These are the Canaanites. Okay? All right? So today's Jewish people descend from Ashkenaz, Gomer, and the Canaanites, the Horites, or Amhorites, and the Amorites. And so I'm going to go into this more on why, the North and the West are bad, biblically speaking. But one thing I want you to also notice about Terra Azarath, okay? So this is basically Alaska and BC and stuff here, all the way down to California. Notice there was no, I want you to notice in this map, there was no Great Lakes in these early maps. See, no Great Lakes. So this is the Septimus Severus map, which is a Viking term, is Septimus, because this is where the Celt Mountains are. This is where there are 7 big mountain ranges. These are the Celtic mountains in Canada, the land of Japheth. But I wanted to show you this because I want to show you where true Turkey is. So there is basically there is a wall of mountains between Eastern Europe and Western Europe, because Western Europe is North Africa. It's not Europe. It's Shem's land. And there is also an artificial wall running from the top, as well as mountains, to create a wall, but later on an artificial wall going all the way through India and China. It's not the Great Wall of China. It's the Great Wall of India and China. And the mountains create a wall between Eastern and Western Europe, and that's why they call it the Wall Street. What were they walling out? What were the people in India and China and by nature through the mountains, in North Africa, so-called Western Europe today? What were they walling out? They were walling out the giants. And there's an even bigger wall that just before China that walls them in as well, that runs all the way through the Pacific. Take a look at this. I'm trying to show you who these Tartarians are, to the point that China, the Babylonians, And even many of the Hamitic nations walled them out.
This pilot from Yakutia couldn't be believed until he showed this video. Flying over the mountains of Yakutia, he saw a strange stripe, but upon closer inspection, he was shocked by an infinitely long fence. But even more mysterious is that exactly the same wall is hidden at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Not long ago, this wall could be seen on Google Maps, but today cartographers have erased all mentions and photos of this fence. Researchers divers say that at the base in some places there are strong disruptions resembling explosions, and the height is uneven, becoming lower in some places. But the scariest thing discovered at the base of these walls is broken equipment of unknown civilization.
Now notice it says Kasparag here and Mogul. Mogul. Now they talk about rich people who are their business moguls. They're Mongols. They're business Mongols, Mongolians. See, it says Tata, Tartary. Notice how it says Cain for China, Cayenne, Cain. Sino, that's Sino. Because the Chinese, Ka Che Khan. Okay, so these are the horde. And that word horde comes from Horite and Amhorite and Amharet and Aharetz. Don't get all upset. We all have some Canaanite in us, all right? So there is a Chinese connection to the Vikings and the Gauls being Khan or the Mongols, okay? They are a mixture. You see Medo-Persia here because Madai asked for land. And we'll go into this later in more depth, but asked for land in the land of Shem because he had a Shemitic wife. So Madai was of the third son of Javan, Yavan, and he married in with the Shemites, which is what became the Medo-Persians. But there is a Viking connection between the Chinese and the Gauls. And we know in Judges it says that Naphtali could not drive out the Canaanites in his land, and they were on the edge of Tyre. Okay? Haram Abif, the widow's son, came out of Tyre. His father was a Tyrian. So we're going to find out where Tyre really is, because Tyre is Tyrkey. It's Turkey. Tyrkey. The key to Tyre. It's not a turkey. It's not a gobble gobble thing. It's the key to Tyre. Tyrkey. All right? So what we see in the past, so here's the scriptures if you need them on the land, really, of Israel, went all the way up into the northern kingdom, went all the way up into what we know as Western Europe. Well, I'll cover that in my next video if something else doesn't come up, yeah, willing. So what we can see from these ancient maps here is that the Black Sea was called Mar Negro. Mar Negro. And Negro means prince. Negast means king. Kebra Negast. Okay, the light of the kings. That's what the Ethiopian book is called. And Negad is what a king is called in Hebrew. Okay, Negro. And so here we have Mer Noir. So first it was Mer Negro. Then later on it became Mer Noir. And it was even called the Moor Sea because the Moors were black. The Blackamoors were black, black-skinned people. So we see the Black Sea constantly being called Negro. That tells us that's their land, the land of the Hebrews. Okay? All right? And we even see the Negroes being here in these other lands, even in the Caspian areas, going into the Caucasus areas. These are the 10 tribes. That's why it says that they fractured, when it talks in the 4 carpenters, it talks about how they fractured the 10 tribes. They didn't just scatter them. They intermingled with them and broke them up as a people. So we can see even, here's the Caspian Sea. And of course, they're calling Mer Noire, the Black Sea, Mer Noire. But they're calling this Nogus, Nogus. So that means, princes and kings. Okay? Negus. Same here. Nagia Horda. So these are the hordes were there and the princes were there. This is just above the Caspian Sea in the land of Tartaria. All right? So this is an ancient map. And we're going to learn, I'll read to you guys from the Kibber Nagast, and we're going to learn that the Byzantines were known to be the Negroes. That's why you see all of those Eastern European paintings of the Negro Byzantines. Because, Eastern and Western Europe, you see all these Negro Byzantines painted all in the churches that I love to show. So when we look closely at this older map, we find that, they try to say they came from the Caucasus Mountains. There's no Caucasus Mountains in this area in these older maps. And there's no Turkey. There's no Tyrkey. However, there is a Turkestan here, just above the Indian mountains and wall. They're walled in on the other side of it, there, in Turkestan. Okay? They're walled in Turkestan. So this is the true original Turkey. And of course, that's Kazakhstan today. That's Kazakhstan today. So Turkey wasn't over here. This was the land that Madai got in the land of Shem, Persia. Okay? Because he married in with the tribe of Shem. So that's how they began to take the land of Shem. But the mountains were walling out the Tartarians, from protecting them from these other, from the Shemitic people were being protected from the Tartarians by all these mountains. And what does it say here when we look even closer? It says Mount Caucasus. This is where the real Caucasian mountains are. They're not over here. They're not in Shem's land. They're way over here. It says Mount Caucasus. They're in Kazakhstan, Turkestan. Tyrkey. They're in Tyre. Okay? This is the Prince of Tyre who has heaped up silver and gold. And again, you have Kashimas, Caucasian mountains. Kashimas, Caucasian mountains. They are in Tyrkey, in the land of Tartaria, Kashimas mountains. They're not over here, they're over here. Okay, and when we go, let me show you this video.
Notice how Esau, Asian, Isaians, Asians, Isaians, okay? This is the connection, right, between Esau and the Canaanites. And so we notice in this first little circle here, it says Astrakhan Taman. So Astros, poles of the Khan, and Taman. So Taman was one of the sons of Esau. So Ostrogoths, Ottoman. And then we come down further. I already showed you the Kashimas Mountains, the Caucasian mountains that are here. As we go down further, it says Bargala, Gala. These are the Galatians, the Gaul-Asians. All right, Gaul-Isarians, Gaul-Mongols, Gaul-Asians. I want you to see and understand these connections from these ancient maps, family. What is going on in Kazakhstan now? Who is feeding on the body of mankind, the dead bodies of humans?
In northern Kazakhstan, near the Russian border, you'll find this mysterious pentagram in an isolated region by a lake. This five-pointed star often represents the spirit and then the elements of earth, air, fire, and water. But if it's upside down, like we see in this photo, it means something much more sinister. It's often used by pagans and Wiccans, and represents dark spirits like the one from the devil. The two upright points tend to imply to Satan's horns.
So this is where Satan is ruling, and this is where the Khazars come from. But let's review the four carpenters one more time to tie it all into the prophecy of Daniel and just prove to you one last time that indeed Netanyahu is the king of the West. And then I have a little pleasant surprise for you again at the end.
Stolen identity, a lock without a key. We've been the butt of the joke throughout history. Yeah, sure am. No light sells 12 tribes. Yes, that I cry. True Hebrew Israelites. Stolen identity, a lock without a key. In early Christianity.
Ezra, descendant of Zadok, and Aaron of the tribe of Levi, captive to the Medo-Persia and Artaxerxes. Behold, saith Yahuwah, I will call together all the kings of the earth to reverence me, which are from the rising of the sun, from the south, from the east, and Libanus, to turn themselves one against another and repay the things that they have done to them. The fire is gone forth from his wrath, and has consumed the foundations of the earth, and the sinners like straw that is kindled. Behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, that they which hear them shall fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood. And from the land of the Assyrians shall the enemy besiege them, and consume some of them. And in their host shall be fear and dread and strife among their kings. Behold, clouds from the east and from the north and unto the south. And they are very horrible to look upon, full of wrath and storm. And they shall go steadfastly unto Babylon and make her afraid. And they shall come unto her and besiege her, and the star and all the wrath shall they pour out upon her. And then shall the dust and smoke go up to the heaven, and they that shall be about her shall bewail her. Okay, so there's a couple of groups we have to look at here, and that is, we're talking about people who are from the rising of the sun, from the south and from the east, and from Libanus, okay? So, Libyan or Lebanon, because we still don't really have the right geography. And the nations of the dragons of Arabia. So we know the Arabians are part of this.
people from the so-called East. They always call China the East, but it's not, but there you go. And the Carmanians. Who are the Carmanians? And from the land of the Assyrians. And so let's take a look. So the Medo-Persian kingdom is the second kingdom that is mentioned in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. And it is mentioned that 4 kingdoms would arise that would rule over and enslave Israel before the coming of Yahusha and their return to their land. And so this is represented in this image of this Babylonian statue where the head is of gold and the chest is of silver. And the Medo-Persian kingdom is represented by the chest because it has, it's got 2 breasts and 2 arms on it, and it's a kingdom that is a mixed kingdom of Japheth and Shem, the Medo-Persian kingdom. So Daniel 2:39 says, "And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee." More detail is given in Daniel 7:5, "And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised itself up upon one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto thee, Arise, devour much flesh." The book of Isaiah, 175 years before it happened, the Medo-Persian kingdom is also mentioned when it says, "Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it." In succeeding verses, the downfall of Babylon is predicted, and Babylon, the glory of the kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when Yahuwah overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. So this is a double prophecy, and this is about to happen again. Why? Because what has happened before will happen again. Syrian captivity of Israel took place after Babylon, when they overtook Babylon. And that was in about around 700 to 800 BC. The Assyrian and Medo-Persian Empire were almost the same empire at one point. That's why the bear holds 3 ribs in its mouth. The Medo-Persian Empire takes Israel captive, and Cyrus plays a particular role, and he's given a special anointing by Yah. And so this is how we begin to tie in the times of the Gentiles beginning. Dragons of Arabia and also the Carmanians. So when we look at the word karma, I said, hey, karma, what about karma? I looked it up on the map, and it's in India. So like I said, this is the land of Shem, all right? And the Carmanians, it's a place in New Delhi, which is the capital of India, all right? Carmania, all right? So it's spelled differently with a K here. Carmania is a place in the region of Bihar, India. Here are some images of the land, Bam Fortress, etc. Kerman Province. Let's go ahead and look this up. Got that from Wikipedia. And now we talked about before how in India there was at the edge of it this place on the rock of Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka is just off India because it seems like it broke off in some kind of catastrophe, right? But in Sri Lanka is this cave temples of the lion. Now this could be a dragon or a tiger, or it could be a lion, because there were these images of this lion around as well. And so that could be Lion of Judah. That's also who the Iranians are known to be. They're known to be rams, but it is definitely a Hebrew or Shemitic symbol. The enemy has players on both sides of the color scheme. And what Black Esau wants you to do is believe that all of the Edomites are white. And what white Esau wants you to believe is that Israel is white. So anyway, you just have to be wise. The true seed of Israel is the Adamic seed, which is made in the image of Yah. Ayub. What we want to say is that the Turkic people, the Russian horde, or the Ottomans were descended from the Taimans, from Taiman, who was one of the sons of Esau, okay? And they are so associated with Iob, son of Esau, in the land of Esau. So Job went through his trial in Uz or Oz, all right? And his name was Iob or Job, all right? And these are associated later with the Oghuz Khangan, with the Mongolians, okay? So we went over this history in Prester John, but I just want you to see the Ottoman Sultan's primacy among the Turkish monarchs. All right, so they were above them because these are the real Edomites. These are the Edomites who typically ran down and captured Israel in West Africa. So Job was also an Edomite. Job was the one who had the trial of his life, lost his entire family, and then Yah gave his family back to him. So this is actually, if you're Isarian or an Edomite, this is the trial of your life. You have to leave your entire family to join Israel, and your family will be given back to you. This gentleman was a Muslim, and he captured and enslaved the Hebrews coming out of these areas in Nigeria. And you can also see, here's another map of Edom. And this, again, is in the same region where we saw the map of Africa and the Hebrews. Because they would sell to the Europeans. The Europeans could not handle the mosquitoes. They could not handle the malaria or the heat. So this is the work that the Black Edomites did in Africa. And this particular guy was an Arab Edomite slave stealer trader who was captured by the Yahudim after capturing a whole bunch of Hebrews and selling them into slavery. And then he was sold to the very trader he had just sold all the Hebrews to. And then he was taken to America. He begged him beforehand, the white slave trader. And so he pleaded with the guy and he said, look, I just sold you a bunch of slaves, but his beard had been shaved off and his hair had been shaved off as well. So he said, well, contact your people, send for them, and if they come get you, I'll free you. But he was sent to America. And then when he arrived there soon after, he was freed and sent back to, and celebrated and sent back. The Arab slave trade was a combination of both enslaving Israel, and then when the Gentiles took over and they took on the identity even of the Arabs, like the Ottomans through the line of Esau, they also enslaved. And so I have Iran and Russia here because they're both symbolized by the bear, and that was the second empire to take the Medo-Persians, as I said before, with Cyrus. Russians originally, a lot of them were black. They were black Russians, okay? And very likely the original Russians were probably a little browner, right? Because this was not the fallen angel seed. Israeli Jews consist of two groups. Ashkenazi Sephardim, 10 to 20% are known as Sephardim or Eastern Jew. The remaining 80 to 90% are Ashkenazi or European Jew. The Ashkenazi Jew comes from the Eastern European countries. The Sephardim come from Mid-East countries. So those are probably the darker Edomites, right? And Danites, right? And I think Naphtali was there also. Let history show us who the Khazars and Sephardim are. In the year 450 AD, one of Europe's barbaric tribes was beginning to show signs of restlessness. This tribe was called the Khazars. Within the next 200 years, the Khazars would form Eastern Europe's largest, most powerful kingdom. They would rule about 200 years, ranking in power with the Muslim Caliphate and the Byzantine Empire. Their kingdom of approximately 1 million square miles bordered the Aral Sea on the east, Kiev, and the Ukrainian steppes on the west. Now, that is not the land of Japheth, that's the land of Shem. Then page 224, the Khazars were a coalition of strong Turkic Hunnic Bulgar clans who, as they began to settle down, mingled with the Scythians who had inhabited these mountains and steppes between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, which was known for a long time as the Khazar Sea. The kingdom encompassed an assortment of tribes and linguistic groups, Alans and Bulgars and Magyars and Slavs. The Khazars collected taxes from them and ruled over a vast landmass stretching from Kiev, which is in the Ukraine, northwest to the Crimean Peninsula into the south from Upper Volga to present-day Georgia. I'm saying this to say that The Scythian bloodline is their bloodline too. Okay? So the Scythians, you can see up in the top right-hand corner as the Scyths, the Sake. So this is relating to sons of Isaac and Esau, and the Scythians are, see it said Ish Kuzay or Ashkenazi. Okay, so there's actually, so Ish means wife or married to Kuzay. And they're an ancient nomadic people living primarily in the regions, this is in the top right corner of the slide here, known as Scythia, which today comprises the Eurasian steppes of Kazakhstan, okay, and the Ukraine, Volga, and the Siberian areas, okay? All right? So their bloodline is of Vlad the Impaler, the Bantu ruled the Hun dynasty, and they used to practice this spirit cooking where you see, remember they were doing that in Hollywood a while back. Miss Brongdonovich woman, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name properly, on the top of the slide there, all her spirit cooking. So that you understand exactly what this means. These people would do these rituals in line with the new moon. The sickle is the shape of the new moon. So these curses were dispatched and transferred at the new moon. And Zechariah proves, I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a flying sickle. And he said to me, what seest thou? And I said, a flying sickle, of the length of 20 cubits, and of the breadth of 10 cubits. And he said to me, this is the curse that goes forth over the face of the whole earth. Genesis 9:25, the curse of Canaan, to serve all of his brothers. And Canaan is the youngest of sons, okay? And what does the youngest child do? Like David, they usually learn very well from all their older brothers and sisters and are crowned kings. So this has a lot to do with China's position right now. He's the youngest son. Sino is the youngest son of Canaan. So he's the youngest of the youngest of the youngest. Okay, the youngest of Noah, the youngest of the three sons, and the youngest of Canaan himself. And so it says, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, blessed be the Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Yahuwah shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So this is everything that we have just been looking at. We are looking at Japheth dwelling in the tents of Shem. Even now, even in Ethiopia, he is black. Japheth is black. Even the Canaanites there are black. Everybody mixed in with the women of Israel to make their skin black. Okay, when you look at a lot of those genetics, the genetics of the Ethiopians are not Shemitic necessarily. There are some, but most of them are not. So he's dwelling in the tents of Shem. But we have the horde, we have the true Canaanite mix of Ashkenaz and Edom and the Horites sitting in the northern kingdom, all right, calling that Jerusalem. But let's look at how Cana became this, and let's finally button and define who the king of the West truly is. I'm going to turn here quickly to China, which represents the Mongols and Mongolian horde, the Canaanites, because Sino is the youngest son of Canaan. All right, and the Canaanites are the Mongolians who are mixed to become the fourth man with the other nations, and we have been being ruled by the Canaanites in these last 70 years, primarily. They are in Britain, and they are the Amorites of America, and even in the Jewish people, they are the Horites, all right, who are mixed with Esau, Edom, and Ashkenaz. That is who the Jewish people are today, is a mix of those three. And so let's continue here with China, or Canaan. All right, that's if you want to see China as the pinnacle of Canaan. And so where we last left off in Daniel, we're going to go all the way to verse 38 in Daniel. And this is the king of the north who has now become the Mongol horde. And it says of his estate, but in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. Now, what is Darth Vader? The force be with you, right? The God of forces is also the God of war. Okay? That's not Yahuwah Sabaoth, because that's the Elohim of angel armies. But this is because it was prophesied for Edom to rule by the sword. That was a blessing that Isaac gave him, that he would live by the sword. That is the God of war and forces. Okay? Thus shall he do in most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge, and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. So the Mongolian horde and Esau Edom and Japheth, they all divide up the land. That is what the Europeans eventually did, right? The scramble for Africa. And notice it says here, Rome was picked apart and divided by 10 barbarian tribes, which became 10 countries in Europe. Okay? But anyway, so this is the Mongolian horde ruling. And so you see they're kind of a mixed multitude. They look like Vikings, but they look like East Indians, but they look black. And so here's Menelik, who was one of the Ethiopian kings. And of course, the Muslims had their influence in there as well, because they're part of that mixed multitude. So here's Prester John. And so here is the story of the legend of Prester John, according to this book on Prester John. I quoted many times from it. So it talks about the Tartars lived north Khaorsia. And in this country, there were great plains that did not have dwellings like cities and castles, but there were good pastures and plenty of great rivers and lakes. They did not have lords, but they certainly paid tax to one great lord, who was called in their language Unk Khan, which means in French, the great lord. And this was the Prester John, of whose kingdom everyone speaks. The Tartars paid him tax of 1 animal for every 10. Now it happened that they multiplied greatly, and when Prester John saw that they were such great people, he said that they could harm him. So this is we're talking about the Ethiopian Prester, okay? This is the Ethiopian, Abyssinian Prester. Sees that the Mongolian horde have grown and says they could harm him, and said that he would disperse them throughout many lands, and so he sent one of his barons there to do this. And when the Tartars heard what Prester John wanted to do to them, they became sad. They all departed together and headed for the desert towards the north, where Prester John could not harm them. And they rejoiced because they no longer had to pay any tax, and so they stayed there for a long while. Now this is also the Arabs, right? So this is the Arabs and the Ethiopians. And it says, what can I tell you? They became such a great multitude of Tartars there that it was marvelous. And when Chinggis Khan saw that he had such a great people, he prepared them with the bow. Now that's the key. They rule with the bow. Okay, Israel uses the sword. Esau Edom uses the sword. But Israel uses the sword of the Spirit, the sword of truth, right? The word of Yah. And with other weapons of theirs, and went conquering throughout certain other regions. And I tell you, they easily conquered 8 provinces, but he did not do anything bad to them, nor did he take their things, but he took them with him to conquer other people.
And in this way, he conquered this great multitude of people, as you have heard. And this people, when they saw the good kingdom and the great kindness of that Lord, a great number of them willingly rallied to him. And when Chinggis Khan had amassed such a great multitude of people which covered the whole earth, he said that he wished to conquer a great part of the world. Then he sent his messengers to Prester John. This was in the year 1200 from the birth of Christ, and he sent word to him that he wanted him to give him his daughter as a wife. And when the Prester John heard that Chinggis Khan ordered him to give his daughter as a wife, he was greatly outraged, and he said, "How can Chinggis Khan ask my daughter as a wife without great shame? Does he not realize that he is my vassal and my servant? Go back and tell him that I would rather have my daughter burned than to give her to him as a wife, and tell him on my behalf that I ought to put him to death if he acts like a traitor and a villain against his lord." Then he told the messengers to depart immediately from his presence and never return. And when the messengers heard this, they immediately departed, so that they went so far that they came to their lord, and they told him everything that the Prester John had said, omitting nothing, all in order. And when Chinggis Khan heard the great dishonor Prester John had done to him, his heart was so inflamed that it almost burst within his heart. And I should tell you that he was a man of great power. After brief silence, he proclaimed in a voice so loud that every bystander could hear it, that he would on no account retain his sovereignty if the insult that the Prester John had done him did not cost its maker dearer than any insult had ever cost any man. And he said that he would soon show him that the Prester John was in fact his vassal. And so he brought all his people together and made the greatest army which has ever been seen or heard of. And he informed the Prester John that he was coming against him with all his forces, so that he could defend himself as best as he could. And when Prester John knew for certain that Chinggis Khan was coming against him with such a great people, he made a mockery of it as though it was nothing. And for he said that they were not men of arms, but nevertheless he said to himself inwardly that if he came, he would do everything in his power. Skipping ahead to chapter 68, he eventually heads out there, and it says both sides armed themselves and fought each other bitterly, and the battle was so great that it was like has never been seen. Heavy losses were sustained on both sides, but in the end, Chinggis Khan won the battle, and in this battle, Prester John was killed. And from that day, Chinggis Khan was constantly attacking that land which he held before he died. And I say to you that Chinggis Khan reigned 6 years after this battle and conquered many castles and many provinces. But at the end of these 6 years, he went to a castle called Kagal, and there he was wounded by an arrow to the knee. From this blow, he was killed. And this was great shame, for he was a noble and wise man. So, in this story, though, what happens is that there's another version of it, because this is 6 years later, where he actually does take the daughter of the Ethiopian king, and he has children with her.
These are the current Saxe Goldberg Khan British queens and kings who are currently ruling Britain and America and the world. So, and these are the Western Europeans. The West is the worst. So I'm going to do another video on that, willing. Just touching more on my book, actually reading from it on why the North and the West are the worst. But keeping back again with Netanyahu, let's just finally prove as the king of the Khan, not necessarily the king of the Jews, how he will be overcome in the present scenario to arise. And remember, I said they're trying to get into Africa. So it may not stop at so-called, what they call so-called, Israel today, Jerusalem today, because true Jerusalem is in Africa. They are in Israel. They're in the northern kingdom. They're not in the southern kingdom of Jerusalem, though. Although among the Ethiopians are hordes. They're even mixed in amongst the Ethiopians. So, but let's continue with this. I don't want to get off topic. They have to get into the land, and so let's just clarify and finally seal the truth and the fact of the prophecy that I believe at this point, and this is not a word from God, but I believe that Netanyahu is the king of the West. Let's finalize it. Let's put a button in it.
10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but will receive 1 hour of authority as kings along with the beast. The designation of the Babylonian king is not indicated directly by naming him. You have to deduce from reading this who he is by directional bearings. Okay, am I making sense? So 4 winds. There's a north, south, east, and west wind. And we deduct by who is not cited, the direction that is not cited, who this king of Babylon is. If we look at this prophecy, looking at Africa being the place where the Most High resides in Mount Zion, when we read this prophecy, this is how we can begin to read it. What it starts off with is in Daniel 11:40, it says, "And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over." So that is the king of the north. That would be Russia. Okay, so Russia is prodding this wicked Babylonian king, and that king comes into the lands and starts to pass over them. So that may be the door to Africa, the place where this all is pushed at and pushed open. The 2-leaf gates. Now, of course, it is the people themselves who are the doors and the gates. But I just want you to consider that and consider perhaps maybe that there is an Eden, Mount Zion at the center of the earth. So this is a picture of this rogue king pushing at Russia, all right, provoking Russia. Now, of course, Russia is clearing the Ukrainians out of the land of Shem. So they're not out of order in that respect, based on the designations of the land. At that time, shall the king of the south now push at this rogue king. Okay, so that's like Ethiopia, Egypt, South Africa. Looks like it might be shaping up that way. So he shall push at him, king of the south. And the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. So he's going to go into many lands, but I'm thinking he's going to go into the land that everyone's contending over right now, Africa. And so I don't think this is the full-on Antichrist. I think this is the king of Babylon, possibly, because it says he'll come to his, what happens in the end, right? It's not the coming of Yahusha. It's something else that is happening to cause him to come to an end. That's why I think this they're talking about is the king of Babylon, a kind of Antichrist. And he shall enter also into a glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, the descendants of Lot and Jordan, and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. So this king already has power over the whole earth, and in this war, he'll have the power of Egypt and the Ethiopians on his side. Okay, he'll have the Ethiopians and Egypt on his side. That's why I say there's also South Africa and there's other nations that could come against him from the south. So, as I've said before, I did this teaching before and I got it from one of my teachers, Prince Israel, based on the land that is called Israel right now. But like I said, I'm reapplying this prophecy here in this context. So at the next stage here, it says, but tidings out of the east, that is India, Iran, and China, and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with a great fury to destroy and utterly make away many. Okay, so it seems like he's just on a rampage now because he's actually at war with all of these carpenters. And this part is really curious. So it says, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So this is a really curious scripture. So obviously, this is the story of his defeat. So he's going to be left in a place where he has no help, and he's going to realize that kingdom is over. But where does he plant his tabernacle? Where has he planted his tabernacle? We look at these directional indicators of north, south, east, and west. We see that the king of the north is coming from the north, that there is an African king coming from the south, and it doesn't seem like it's Ethiopia or Egypt. And then from the so-called east, well, it'd have to be the east if it's India coming and China, all right, are coming from the east. So the one direction we are missing is in this whirlwind, because it takes 4 winds to create a whirlwind. What is the final direction we are missing? So you answered correctly. Yes, it is the West. The West is not mentioned. So he is the king of the West. He is the king of Babylon. He is the king of Egypt. And that is Amorite.
I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you understand that, yes, indeed, Netanyahu is the Ashkenazi Canaanite king of the West. And I am working on my book. I'm going to probably read directly from it to give you more insight through the Kibber-Nagast and other books of the geography of the land and the peoples. But I hope you found that interesting. So family, as a final treat, I want you to look at this video shot in 1929 of the Zeppelin. 1929, before the crash, literal crash of the Zeppelin. And the so-called economic crash, basically a grand reset. So if the American Civil War was April 12th, 1961 to 1965, what we're going to see here, these airplanes and all of these visions of the Zeppelin, and here is the city of New York, the very city of New York in 1929 would mean so that it was exactly 60 years. It would have taken them 60 years to build New York with slaves. Tell me that the city of New York wasn't already here. Take a look at this imagery of the city of New York in 1929. The Gentiles did not build New York City. The people who have been there since 700 BC, who came in the time of Alexander the Great, 500 BC, and were also sent to America since 70 AD, and literally in the last 500 years built these cities, built the city of New York. Look at it.
Yes, people, 5,000 men, women, and children are sitting on newspapers in the park. The streets are packed. All available parking places have been taken. Deafening cheers rise up when the Zeppelin appears on the horizon. But when the airship flies over, the thousands standing to watch are silent. Drivers are breaking all the rules, putting the brakes on and climbing onto the roofs of their automobiles. The police are trying to keep everything under control. They issue warnings and blow their whistles, but no one pays any attention. Pretty soon, the officers give up, shrug their shoulders, and turn their eyes up to the sky to join the watchers. Yes, people, New York has gone crazy.
Well, here we are, right at the official stand. Within a few moments, the Graf Zeppelin will be back home.
The enemy has players on both sides of the color scheme. And what Black Esau wants you to do is believe that all of the Edomites are white. And what white Esau wants you to believe is that Israel is white. So anyway, you just have to be wise. The true seed of Israel is the Adamic seed, which is made in the image of Yah.
Black people in the genetic testing are like the original. And how does the ADL say it's anti-Semitic for black people who are related directly to King Solomon and King David, the line of Judah, to act like they don't know this? I'm not blaming Jews for this. I'm blaming the leftist ADL. To deny black Jews their heritage is a historic fraud. It's a damn historic fact. It's on Wikipedia. It's not even debated.
Watch out for that Hegelian dialectic. And I'm just trying to keep up, so sorry if I can't label and link everything. I'm just trying to explain this stuff to you. I get the idea, but doing this video takes a long time and a lot of work. And I'm sorry for it being sketchy, but I got to get the information out to you. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine on you. May he be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you shalom. So family, go ahead and pick up the calendar, the cookbook at intoalltruth.net. That's intoalltruth.net. And support this ministry. I thank you for all your prayers and support. They mean so much to me. If you would please hit the like button and share. It doesn't cost you anything. I would greatly appreciate it. And Baruch to you all.
Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Give him thanks by saying hallelujah.